Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the From Cameras to Couches podcast. I, as usual, am your host, Zach Davis, and I am joined by a special guest here today. My brother-in-law, Mr. Reilly Doyle, is in town. Hello, Reilly.
Hello.
Welcome to the party.
Thank you for having me.
Or the nightmare. You take your pick. We're going to be talking about something fairly nightmarish today in its own right. We were thinking of options to talk about while he was out here, because he's out here for a quick weekend trip, and I wanted to do an episode with him. We discussed The Nice Guys, which was on the platter and certainly would have been a good one, and I think will be one that we'll save for the future. Quality movie, but we decided to go with Matt Reeves' The Batman, and I think it was a good pick because I've rewatched this movie fairly recently. I just got a 4K copy of it for all of you physical media nerds out there. I really love 4Ks. You probably know that by this point because I talk about them on every episode, but the 4K for The Batman is wonderful. The movie is wonderful. It's pretty amazing. I remember seeing it in theaters when it came out. Did you see it in theaters?
Oh my gosh, yeah. Rachel and I saw it, and I think we were a little bit late.
Yeah.
But honestly, so I thought we had missed a decent amount of the film, and I walk in and I was like, oh, what the heck's happening?
What's going on?
There's just a zoom in of this guy in his house.
Yeah.
Like, what's going on? What's the step?
You got in at the right time.
Yeah, and I was like, all right, I already hear the score going on, and I'm like, okay, intensity's building. I'm in.
Let the games begin. And wow, did they begin? Yeah, I remember seeing the Batmobile sequence for the first time on the big screen, and seeing Colin Farrell as the Penguin, and just marveling at it because I'd never seen it done before like that. And for our generation, I mean, the standard is The Dark Knight, right?
Oh yeah.
And I mean, you do have Joker, which is something entirely different, which is a nasty, gritty portrayal of Gotham in the same sense. But I'm not particularly a deep knowledge kind of person on Batman. I know a lot of the stuff. My cousin Caleb was a huge Batman fan, so I absorbed a lot of stuff through him. But I've never been fully in on it. I think I own a copy of The Killing Joke. That's about as far as I go. But I know that this one was inspired by The Long Halloween and Batman Year One, which are two of the, I guess, spin-off graphic novels. I don't know.
Yeah, they're spin-offs, I think. I read a couple of them growing up. That was my trip to the library.
Yeah.
That was my way of my parents giving me oh, Reese, you're reading something. I was like, all right, I guess I'll grab this. I like Batman.
Certainly not bad. I remember getting a Spider-Man compendium off the shelf one time.
I did the same exact thing. Yeah. So, I think that's part of it. But also there's I would say Batman is probably the only DC character I can really ever get into. Yeah. Really.
I think Superman is really from and for another generation in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Just the invincible man that can tackle anything that's from a different place. And I don't know. I feel like that speaks to a lot of Americana just through and through. And I don't know if people relate to it as much these days. We're about to find out because there's a new one coming out. The James Gunn Superman is coming out.
Yeah. We'll see how that goes.
David Corn Sweat is the guy that's playing Superman.
Who is that?
While he's the guy, not the bad guy in Twisters, but the guy that is the assistant to the bad guy. That's the only thing I know him from. That's legit the only thing I know him from.
I mean, honestly, the bad guy is the Twister itself.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, he plays the sister of the Twister. It's going to be interesting seeing James. I think Guardians 3 was the last thing James Gunn did. Before that, he did the Suicide Squad, which was, I feel, pretty successful.
The second one was definitely better than the first one. They definitely
I think it was
things.
An entire reboot, and it's kind of amazing that I think Suicide Squad came out in 2016, and The Suicide Squad came out in 2020 or 2021. Mm-hmm. And it's really good, and it's really funny, and it's very much James Gunn, and I feel like the humor for it, even having rewatched it recently, the humor for it is already dying. It's very of the time, but already dated. I don't know. It's interesting. I don't think it's gonna hold up well, but I really enjoyed it when I saw it. So James Gunn is gonna be doing Superman. Anyway, we're not talking about Superman today. We're talking about Batman, and we're talking about in particular the Batman.
Yeah, the one.
This is such an unbelievably awesome movie. I like I said, have had so much fun rewatching this and seeing it in the theaters for the first time, and with the added lore of the Penguin in the past year, it's made it a lot more interesting and got a lot more people excited for what's coming next with the second one, which Matt Reeves is also directing. And I don't know where that's gonna land because it's been kicked back forever and forever, and I think they're saying it's like 2027 that it's gonna come out now.
And we all know how rumors go with films. We get all sorts of random stuff shot at us. So there's been some rumors of it being Mr. Freeze, or if it being Hush, which for those who don't know about Batman,
Hush is like hinted at in this one, right?
Right, yeah, just a little bit. But I mean, his character's in a way, this might tick off some Batman enthusiasts, but in a way, to most people, he is similar to Hal Ritter. Can't speak today. The villain of Batman, the main villain. How he was portrayed in it, of a serial killer type of vibe.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's like there's so much going on here that is not necessarily like homage to how dark Heath Ledger's performance as the Joker was, because it's an entirely different thing. Like this is a serial killer thriller in a lot of ways, and it's a noir movie primarily, which makes this framework like perfect. There is a little bit of a barrier for entry in just like you have to know the framework of Batman. That's about it. But even with that, it does almost everything originally. And I don't know, like the modern sheen of how this movie is shot and how it's acted by Pattinson, and everything just falls into place perfectly. And it really turns out to be like a very engaging 3-hour runtime where you're watching this mystery unfold and you're seeing these set piece action sequences that don't feel like the bulk of the movie. Like I think about the Batmobile scene and I'm like, that is such a wild and awesome part of that movie, but I don't ultimately think about the movie like that. I think of it more as like the procedural thing where he's hunting the Riddler.
Yeah, well, and on top of that too, it's like he's in his beginning stages still. Like I think it was at year 2 or year 3.
It's year 2 because I think the monologue at the beginning is like 2 years of nights have turned me into a nocturnal animal.
And then he closes like the journal and it says like year 2 or something like that.
Yeah, it's
which
the Batman Project year 2.
I thought was so cool because a lot of the Batman movies do not portray the early on stages. Like I mean, I guess the Batman Batman with Christian Bale.
Batman Begins does, but he's like a guy in his. He feels like a guy in his early 30s at best.
It's
and
not
he's
as
just
fresh.
Like, and he's kind of not Tony Starkish, but he's more reserved than that. But he's kind of pretentious, and in this one, it's that, but it's if he was like 20 years old, and he's just a dour Nirvana-loving teenager that is just so angsty, and it really worked. And the way that like everything is dark as hell in this movie, both like thematically and in light, everything is just so perfectly toned. I don't know, it works so well.
Well, and then on top of that too, it's funny because I didn't really watch anything of Robert Pattinson in it besides like I had seen like scenes from Twilight.
Yeah,
but so like I was a little hesitant at first, and then over COVID, my brother was like, "Hey, we need to watch Tenet." I was like, I don't know, man. It's got Robert Pattinson in it, but it is a Christopher Nolan film, and I'm always a fan of Christopher Nolan. So I was like, let me try it. And I was like, okay, Pattinson's got the brutality down. He can play that type of gritty character and know how to get the combat down. He's not some teen pop star. So I think that was something I was like, all right, he's got a chance. I'm going to give him a chance.
You've passed the boy band check. I'm
right. And then, of course, he's had all these other films come out, and I'm excited to see what else he puts out. And then, of course, Rachel, though, when we went to go see it, she's like, I don't know, it's Robert Pattinson, Twilight guy. I don't know if I want to see some guy doing a little, like, I don't know, what do they call it? Like a Chad face to the camera. The smoldering, that's what it is.
Smoldering. I believe the kids these days refer to it as mewing.
Mewing.
I am not the kids these days. I have just spent too much time around a little brother that is 10 years younger than me, and it shows. Yeah, it definitely, that was a shock. Like, a lot of people did not expect the Pattinson thing to work, especially coming off of the Ben Affleck thing,
Yeah.
which ultimately is not very successful. It has some high moments. It definitely, like, I think about, I don't even know which movie it was in. I think it was Batman versus Superman, but there's a scene where he's like just tearing apart this warehouse full of guys, and it's pretty sick. And that's like one of the only things that I know from that.
Well, and like I would say with this one, they have so many fighting scenes. Like I had a whole list and I started writing it down and I was like, you know what? Every fighting scene in this movie is stellar. It's so well choreographed. It doesn't look super sped up and CGI'd. Which again, I think that's kind of what Matt Reeves wanted to go with, is he kind of took the Christopher Nolan aspect of a grounded Batman.
Yeah, and he's like, let's make it a street fight.
Right. Yeah, let's make it a street fight. This guy is armored up. He doesn't really know how to fight all the way, but he can still kick some butt. Like, so I thought that was super cool to get to see.
It's super fun seeing it like in the first introduction of this. I guess we'll use this as kind of a segue to get into the synopsis of it. But basically, he starts out as just this cowled guy prowling the night. There's the mayor has been killed, and he gets an invite from the Gotham police to go investigate with him. But it also shows like him talking about like what 2 years of doing this have done to him, and how he's learned about the criminal movement, and it highlights that in like this fight between him and all of these gang members that are having an initiation for another gang member by assaulting somebody that just got off the subway. And it's such a quick and brutal sequence, and there's so much gnarly stuff, like people shooting at him, he's getting shot in his bulletproof armor, and he's like tasing them in the neck with his hands and breaking people's arms, and it's so perfectly toned, and then it just moves into like this dour Nirvana.
Oh gosh,
it's so interesting, and it's been like memed to death at this point, right? But
oh yeah, they had all sorts of different memes where it was like just always playing the song, and then they just change like some word at the very end of that song.
Yeah, it was a non-stop just flow of memes that came out about this. But I think it's just really good tonally, and it makes for good like big budget movie making. Like when you're making a movie with a big budget, take those swings. I think it's totally worth it.
Mm-hmm.
And this one does, and it succeeds. But long story short, he's prowling around. He finds out about the mayor. He goes to the mayor's house. The police force do not like him. They're like, this guy's a vigilante operating outside of the law. We're not fond of what he stands for. So he's cursed by everybody but Lieutenant Jim Gordon, of course.
Well, and I like that they don't call him the Batman.
Yeah,
it's not referenced at all. It's vengeance. It just shows how fresh the character is.
I think what it is like on a street level, they reference him as vengeance. Like when they're talking about him in fear, and even the Penguin later in the movie is like, "Hey, vengeance!" Like it's such a cool idea. Like I think that is so
I loved
sick.
it. They just took a different, unique style. They made so many things unique about this movie from the other portrayals of Batman, which we were talking about this earlier about how the noir gritty style has really only been portrayed really in one other adaptation of it, which was the Arkham series games, which were great video games. If you like games, I recommend trying the Arkham series games.
You've got to play Asylum City and Night. If you have to pick one, play City.
Yes.
Night is great, but it's just not the same nowadays.
No, well, and like it was too. I mean,
it also runs better on my Steam Deck than it does on my PlayStation. So it's just what a time to be alive. But yeah, it definitely like those are like unfolding, and while they do have like these big rosters of villains, and you're coming across like, this character is informing you on this character, is informing you on this character, but it still feels like it's just this thing unfolding in front of you. And that's also a testament to video games and the way that they're able to world build. Right. But it's just cool to see them trying something different. And this is I would almost say entirely different if it wasn't just Batman. And some people will see it and just be like, this is just Batman. And that's fine. I think it's the coolest Batman, and you can do whatever you want with that. So he's working with Lieutenant Gordon to figure out what's going on with this murder. There have been some clues left behind, particularly a note addressed to him. He uses that to find like a thumb attached to a thumb drive that releases like information about the mayor who had been secretly seeing this girl in the background. And the mayor is married. They go to investigate the girl at the Ice Club Lounge, which is the Penguins' hideout. And like club where everybody goes, and then there's also like a lounge below it. I think it's like 57 below or something like that.
Yeah.
But Batman goes there in full garb and goes to question the Penguin about this girl. He's like, I don't know her. And then he meets Selena Kyle, who's bringing in some drops, which are the drug that everybody's trading around on the streets of Gotham. And he's just like negotiating an order, and he's like, I don't know anything about this girl, yada yada yada. Colin Farrell shows up for the first time in the scene. He's just like, he captures the screen every time he's on it. And
It's just unrecognizable. It's so cool.
The whole time he's on, it's like a war to try and be better than him. And
Right.
he just, because of the makeup, it's like you've already achieved this level, and to try and top that, like for Pattinson to try and top that is nigh impossible. So they end up just like playing support for him in a lot of the ways.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, it's so sick. There's all kinds of dance music going around.
That might be one of my favorite scenes.
Yeah.
I know we're gonna talk about that later, but all the fighting scenes, as I mentioned earlier, were phenomenal.
Yeah,
It's hard to pick really just one, but I think I kind of narrowed it down.
they're so well shot, like they're so smartly shot, and not shaky cam, excited in third person on his shoulder watching this and that. It's all like stills and pans and really thoughtful, like keep with the action.
One, it's not like a one punch knockout.
Yeah,
like
yeah.
it's like look, he's not a
there's
typical Batman where he's just like, all right, one punch, this guy's out.
Yeah, this guy's not a superhero. Like he is a vigilante. He's just like a dude that is a vigilante, and I think that's the coolest part. He just also happens to have a lot of money, which is all Batman. But this Batman feels like he has the least amount of money from Wayne Enterprises. Like the Batmobile is a like Dodge Charger, like a souped up Dodge Charger, which is the coolest thing ever.
I thought that was so cool. They went with that because like you have the Tumbler and
Yeah,
Christian Bale,
the
which
Tumbler is
was
iconic
sweet.
in its own way.
But then they took it and they're like, you know what? This guy's gonna be grungy. He's gonna be playing Nirvana. Why don't we give him like a muscle car looking thing? And as soon as I heard the little like sound where it's like, boom,
Yeah.
like you're
Oh,
like,
God.
oh, here we go.
Oh, it's so cool. The afterburner comes on. Yeah,
It was like chills.
It's amazing. You know what? We don't even need to really like go through the synopsis of this movie. We talked about the joys of it so much. It's so much fun. Let's just break into like, let's see. I had a couple. Matt Reeves just like knows exactly what he was doing with this. I just want to talk about him for a second because he did the two better Planet of the Apes movies.
Okay, so I forgot that he did those. I was about to ask you. I was like, I'm trying to remember what else he has directed.
Yeah, he didn't do Rise of the Planet of the Apes, but he did Dawn and War for the Planet of the Apes.
Okay, I had watched those when I was like sick one day, and I was
Yeah.
like, all right, you know, I'm gonna watch these. I've always wanted to watch them, and then I saw them on your video. I was like, all right, I'm gonna check it out.
I really, the second one is like genuinely outstanding. It's an excellent action movie it's so 2010s, but it works so perfectly, and there's like a really good message and arc behind it. And War is a little bit more dicey, but still closes the chapter really well. And then whatever the one that just came out this year or this past year was pretty shitty.
And is Gary Oldman in that?
Yes, yeah.
Which is kind of wild. It's so funny because I always thought of Gary Oldman as like a guy who plays always a nice guy, and then as I got older, I started seeing him and everything. I was like, oh no, he always plays the villain. Like it was really only Batman. He's a good
he plays
guy.
Jim Gordon in the Batman trilogy, the Nolan Batman trilogy, and he is so good in it, particularly in The Dark Knight. He's fantastic.
He's fantastic. I love him in every single one of those any of those movies in that trilogy. But then I saw him in what was it? Is it True Romance that he's in? That he's a villain.
Yes, yeah.
It was like a very short stint that he pops up, and you're like, who the heck is this guy?
Yeah, he's just awesome, and it's kind of funny. Like Reeves working with him, or Nolan working with him in Batman, to work with Reeves on Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes for him to be recast by damn, I can't remember the guy that plays Gordon in
He
the
was
Batman,
in
but
Casino Royale. He plays as his
he's
friend.
in Casino Royale. He's in Westworld. He's really big in Westworld. 2 years ago, he was in American Fiction, which is excellent. But yeah, like the cast is all going ham, and here's Zoe Kravitz as Selena Kyle, just awesome. Rachel says that they don't have chemistry. What do you think about that?
I had mixed feelings about Zoe Kravitz. So here's how I feel about them having chemistry, because I look at Battinson as someone who is broken. And he is not recovered whatsoever. Like, look, he even doesn't want to be Bruce Wayne. He has zero interest in being Bruce Wayne.
I'm doing this for revenge on crime.
Yeah, so I think that a lot of his emotions are so dead inside that I think that as far as chemistry goes, I think that him and Catwoman showed as much chemistry as a broken person could show.
Yeah, I think that's it, and I think that's why it's ultimately better that, spoilers, at the end of the movie, they don't end up together. Like they just split off.
Part ways,
She goes to where? Bloodhaven?
Yeah. So she goes to where, which for those who are not familiar with comics, so one of the Robins that breaks off, he becomes Nightwing.
It's Dick Grayson, right?
Yeah, Dick Grayson. So he goes to Bloodhaven, and that's his town that he takes over, or his city that he watches over because he wants to break ties with Batman. So that's kind of just a little fun fact right there for the comic lovers. But so like when I heard Bloodhaven, I was like, oh, Nightwing, Dick Grayson.
That's a cool little cameo. There's a lot of stuff like that. Like we were talking about the one with Hush earlier, and I can't remember what the name of the guy is, but he's involved in one of the Riddler reveals that Batman does, and I think they're at the same orphanage, right? Like they were at the.
So I want to say someone might freak out about this one. I'm pretty sure Hush somehow is related to the Waynes.
Okay.
So he was supposed to be.
That's right. Like his dad was supposed to be treated by Thomas Wayne.
So that's why he hates Bruce Wayne so much, is because he thinks that Bruce stole his fortune and he didn't earn it. So I want to say that there's some relation to that. Just because I was so big involved in Batman, I remember reading up the bios whenever they would introduce a character. They're like, here's a little short bio, or even in the video games, you could just look up on the journals.
Is Hush the founder of the Court of Owls?
I do not think so. But that's another rumor that's going to be. That was another rumor for the villains potentially for this next one.
Yeah, that's very much like. What's the Kubrick movie? Eyes Wide Shut. Like,
yes, yeah.
We have a cult of people that are in high political power and they manipulate everything. And we don't do that here. There's so many little cameos and Easter eggs and stuff like that throughout this, and it just works so well. Like even to the point of where Colin Farrell gets interrogated at one point in the movie, and his legs get tied up, and him as the Penguin, he waddles away. Like there's just little jabs like that that are just so thoughtful, and Reeves is so smart about the way that he puts these projects together, and I think that the next one's going to be really good if he has anything to say about it, because he's been working on the script for a long time. I don't think it's fully finished.
He's still got some time. I really hope to see it. I was kind of bummed that it was moving the release date, but honestly, give him as much time as he needs to, as long as we're not having another Into the Spider-Verse situation.
A lot of people are reevaluating like everything, and a lot of that was as a result of the writer's strike, and resulted in stuff like Captain America: Brave New World, and
I can't believe you saw that.
I can't either. I will never.
Is it another Venom situation?
Get those 2 hours back. No, it. Here's what I will say. It was not like pissing me off as much as Venom did. Venom just made me mad because the gags were just like every time they were trying to make a joke, I was like, I want to stab myself.
It was that cringy.
It was just so boring and dumb, and every bit of it just felt like a heartless, brainless thing. Captain America: Brave New World just felt like it was generated by AI, like the whole movie.
They're testing the waters.
Yeah, that's my more cynical idea around it, but that's a conversation for another time.
Yeah, I know. We could talk about that.
We're diverting, but let's talk about some favorite scenes now that we've just dug deep into this.
Okay, I've got one.
Yeah.
So I would say, I mean, out of the fighting scenes, I think my favorite one is when he first goes into the Iceberg Lounge.
Yeah.
Because you see the two brothers answer.
Club lighting.
They're like, who the heck is this guy? And then all of a sudden he's like, kicks down the door and starts beating the crap out of the guy. And then, but the guy's not knocked out.
That little suit's going to get filled with blood.
Yeah.
Is what they say.
That line, yeah.
Yours.
And so then he's like, he's beating him up, but like, he's not knocking him out. But then you see, him start to get really ticked off. Like you see Battinson get really ticked off. So then like he uses
all right, I'm out of patience.
Yeah, he uses his grappling. Like he takes a shotgun blast to himself, and not at point blank range, but it was like pretty close.
Good hit.
Yeah, a good hit, and he's just like, all right, screw this. I'm gonna shoot my grappling hook at this guy.
You see the result of later when he's like patching himself up.
Yeah, and then you see, and then you see the penguin pop up, and he's like, hey,
whoa,
like,
everybody, calm down here. Yeah, and then proceeds to steal the scene for the next 5 minutes.
Oh my gosh! Well, and I just was not expecting Colin Farrell to pull that off
to look like that and sound like that and be Colin Farrell.
Yeah,
and it's still that's not something I'll never get over. It's just like him doing his normal Colin Farrell voice in full penguin costume is just bizarre.
Well, and I like the take they took on the penguin because he is a gangster, but like
definitely
you see all these other representations. Like, I mean, Danny DeVito is great.
Yeah,
not gonna lie.
Yeah.
But I think that as far as a dark gangster character who runs,
it's a grounded version of it, and it's fully believable. And
oh yeah,
like most of the TV show is believable. I think there are some liberties, like some pieces that I was like, yeah, I could give or take with that, but I think like ultimately the setup for it is believable in the best way that a representation of like New York, New Jersey could be. Mm-hmm. Without like crossing the line of this is reality and this is fiction, because it is definitely like this is Gotham, this is not New Jersey.
Oh my gosh! Well, and I loved everything about that series.
Yeah.
It was tough. Like it was.
It lands the plane. Like the last episode is fantastic.
Oh, gosh, and like it was funny because I was like so bummed, and I don't want to ruin it because it's a great ending, but I was bummed at first at the ending, and then I took time and I was like, and Rachel was like, "Are you kidding me? Like,
yeah,
why are you worried about that? Like, how did you not think this was going to happen?" And so, that was kind of my takeaway from it. I was like, "This is great. I'm glad that they did a series and as opposed to a movie. Definitely. I think that kind of helped draw it out a little bit more for people that were wanting that material.
Like 8 hours long total or something like that.
Yeah. Which, I mean, for a 3 hour, after a 3 hour The Batman movie, which they needed all that time anyways, with how many villains were in that movie and how many moving parts were going on within it. Just because there were a lot of secrets being revealed and corruption. And again, I think that was a very cool take that Matt Reeves took on the storytelling of it.
I think it's one of my favorite quotes in the movie. Is pretty obvious, but it's just it kind of illustrates that point well. And in ripping the Band-Aid off and being like, we're doing something different here and still keeping it PG-13 because it is it's a brutal movie, but it remains PG-13. But right at the beginning, when the commissioner's like, "Happy fucking Halloween!"
Oh yeah,
and it's just like, all right, we've got the one F word that we can use in the entire movie out of the way.
Now we're good.
But we want you to know that this is serious.
Yeah, this is serious
because this is going to be dark.
Well, also, let's not pass on the fact that the guy gets his head bashed in with a floor puller?
It's the carpet scraper.
Yeah, and it's like, okay, this is pretty dark. This is how it's going to be.
Yeah, and there's people getting their heads like caught in rat traps and or traps made for their heads for rats to eat their head. It's there's like 7 inspiration here. There's a lot of Zodiac Killer inspiration, which was actually the direction that Reeves wanted to take with the Riddler.
Yeah, because you had all the signs and everything, and the like weird little like cipher.
Yeah.
So I thought that was so cool because then he ends up referencing him as the Bat, which
Yeah.
no one ever references him as. It's always referenced as Vengeance.
Yeah.
So I thought that was kind of cool that.
It's gotta be like the worst freaking Spanish I ever heard.
Right.
It's la rata la la. Oh my
But
god.
I think another one of my favorite quotes is fear is a tool. When that light hits the sky, it's not just a call, it's a warning. Which the score going with that, I was like, because you see a guy who has a drop head on him, and he had just robbed a store. He sees the light, and the score gets louder and louder, and he's like, it's a warning.
Michael Giacchino or Giacchino,
yeah,
just
killed it,
murdered it with the score on.
So then, like, you see the drop head guy. He looks in the alley. He sees it's dark. He thinks that Batman's there,
and it's just the fear of that moment. It's like fear of consequence.
I was getting chills most of that movie, but that was definitely a most chilling moment at that very, very beginning, because you're like,
it is so
sweet,
such a good intro. Like the first 30 minutes of it are unstoppable in the way that like Mad Max Fury Road is unstoppable. It's just like it just opens on this chase sequence and the first 30 minutes you're just like, I have not stopped since we started the movie. And this feels like that. And for it to be a noir movie that is so like plotted and all about discovery of clues and slow pacing and slow burning like that, for the first 30 minutes of it to feel as engaging as they are is really just magic.
Well, and I didn't feel like it was 3 hours. Like when I watched it, I was like, I remember 3-hour movies. I'm like, oh my gosh,
I remember finding out it was 3 hours after the fact, and I was like, oh my god.
Well, because that's what happened with Dune Part 2 when I went to go see it.
Yeah,
I was like,
definitely.
I gotta go to the bathroom, and then I was like, oh my gosh, everything's happening right now.
Yeah.
And it was like the last like 40 minutes of it, and then that's when everything happens, and I'm like, oh my gosh. And so, but like with the Batman, I was like, oh sweet. It's always the same pacing. And then they're just mystery after mystery after mystery being just slowly drawn out until it's revolved.
Until it gets to a finale point. And then it merges the scale with the character and puts him to reckon directly with saving the city. And he does. And not only does he, but he recognizes that maybe a symbol of vengeance is not as effective as a symbol of hope.
Right.
And it just comes full circle, and it's awesome. It's so cool. I didn't have any more scenes written down. There are so many good scenes in between that moment and this moment, the opening and this moment. But,
okay, I would say I wanted to do one more. So the chase sequence between him and Penguin.
Oh,
that scene, which obviously that was in the trailer.
That was the one that I was gonna talk about.
Like where he just like comes out of the fire and everything, but like also just like the chase sequence. He's like avoiding people and everything, and then like Penguin just throwing everything at him.
I watch that scene when I need motivation. Like it is so flammable. Like it is from the second that you see the afterburner kick on in the Batmobile, and you get the outline of it, and then he revs the engine and just like lurches the car forward at him, and lurches and then stops it, and then it cuts to him running. And
I think that's everything that Michael Bay aspires to be, but actually can't achieve it.
Definitely. Like you could never be this cool. They are whipping the shit out of these cars around these corners. It is so fun to watch.
Well, and here's a fun fact: there were 2 cars. There was one that was electric, and then one that was gas.
It's so what a wild choice, but it is so like, God, it just fires me up. It is such a good chase sequence, from everything from like the way it begins and the quickness with which Batman is going to capture the Penguin, but Selina's also there, and Selina discovers her friend dead, and then the second that they do it, they realize that they're being ambushed by the Penguin, and they flip the coin back on them by getting in the Batmobile and chasing him down. And it's so awesome, and all the way through to like the final shot of the Penguin upside down in the car, and you see Pattinson walking towards the camera upside down.
Oh, that was great!
Awesome.
See the fire in the background and everything.
Yeah. I wanted to note all 3 entries into the Iceberg Lounge. The first one when he goes there in the Batsuit. The second one when he goes there as Bruce Wayne.
Right.
And then the third time when he kind of comes in as both.
Yeah.
And he's like, I'm not wearing the bat suit, but I've got like the makeup on, and he's got his face covered and stuff, and he's just the first time he beats the shit out of the guys.
Yeah.
The second time he's like, I'm Bruce Wayne, please let me in. I need to talk to Falcone. And then he's kind of mopey in the second time, and then the third time he like sneaks in.
He looks like a homeless guy. Like that's he's got the backpack on. He's got like a jacket with a hoodie on and like dark makeup. And I thought that was so cool because
it's so cool.
It's like his way. He even does it during the daytime. He doesn't want to dress up as the Batman, like as Vengeance.
Yeah.
During the day all the time. So like that's how kind of his like way around it of not looking like Bruce Wayne, but also not coming off as Vengeance. So I thought that was a cool take because a lot of these superhero movies, it's like two characters. That's all you got, or two sides to that character. But like with this one, you kind of have this little extra third one where he's like, all right, I'm in recon mode.
In between. It's cool. It's very, and he does it at the beginning of the movie too. Like
right.
He's out in the crowd just scouting, and it's such a cool thought. Like it's distinct. Like it is totally unfamiliar to most other Batman stuff.
And I love the tech in it too. Like you have the little contact lens where he records it and then he writes his journal. He's looking through the. And
it looks rudimentary.
Footage.
It doesn't look. It's like not clear footage. It doesn't work if it's like in this corner of your eye. The audio barely works on it. Like it's.
I thought it was cool. It's like still the startup of it, so he's still figuring out the tech and everything.
Yeah, but it's not like, oh, hey, Mr. Fox, I'm Lucius, and Mr. Wayne, I have a tumbler for you. There's 4 of them left in the world. You can have one if you want it. And
also, here's this top of the line suit. By the way, does it stop dog bites? And then like he's just got all this like updated things and everything like that. But then you got, which is still cool. Yeah, I'm not bashing Christian Bale's at all.
It's just it's different. It's like it's the idea of like when you have everything and want everything versus when you have everything and like want one thing but just are focused on like these small aspects of it. Just like, oh, I need this as my next tool to get to where I need to go to, and you don't necessarily have access to like the more superhero-esque things as like the ability to fly around everywhere, because he doesn't have that in this. He has a glide suit. Like
I was not expecting that at first. I was like, oh, okay, like he has this weird little like neck guard, and I was like, all right, I guess he has like a thing like a football pad or something like that. Which kind of the hockey pads reference in Christopher Nolan's film when they're like, I'm not wearing hockey pads. Like, but like that's kind of what I thought it was. Like, oh, just an extra padding, and then it's like, oh no, he's got a full flight suit on.
No, it's so cool, and I mean, I should back up and say that I know that Batman doesn't fly around everywhere. I know he glides everywhere.
Yeah,
but this is like an actual wingsuit that people use. Here's a fun fact for you: that shot where he hits the bus and like breaks onto the road, that's the same street in Chicago that they shot the "Come On" scene in The Dark Knight. When Heath Ledger's walking towards the Batmobile and he's about to run him over.
Oh my gosh.
Same street that they shot that on.
That is wild.
Pretty cool, just lit differently.
Yeah.
That scene. Yeah. Last one that I want to mention is Selena and Bruce riding away at the end of the movie. I think it's just so good. Like watching them split off at the intersection. It's so fantastic, and the music swelling. It's such a good capstone on like a 3-hour movie. You're like, wow, this is an epic ending.
I think one other scene was when which this is the most talked about scene, I would say, as far as the debate goes, is, do the villains know that Batman is Bruce Wayne?
Yeah,
and that like it was a massive debate between me and Rachel, because for the longest time,
Wayne,
because like I think that was I love that scene because it was such like a conversation.
I was like thrown for a loop when I first saw it, because I was just like, what's happening? Like he knows.
I thought he knew like, for the longest time.
We almost had him, and then I was like, he doesn't know.
Like I'm like pretty much like 85% sure that he doesn't know.
Yeah,
now. But
I'm pretty positive that that's supposed to imply that he doesn't.
As I watch it more and more, that's when it kind of made me realize, I was like, okay, he doesn't actually know.
I'm wondering if that's something that Reeves is going to factor into the next one, is like the idea of maybe it's not that hard to spot the person that has access to multi-million dollars and might just know who the person running around the city is. Like, I don't know. I feel like it's something that's not, like, it's always not that hard to uncover. Like, the dude's got a really ridiculously unique chin and face profile. You can probably figure it out.
Right.
But the fact that they don't play it on this one is like, okay, it's something that you should just suspend your belief for, or suspend your disbelief for.
Well, in the comics too, there's you got like the Joker who he has zero interest in finding out who Batman is. But then you have the Riddler. He knows, but he doesn't want anyone else to know because he is a smart villain.
Yeah.
He's like, look, I put in all this effort to figure out who Batman is. I know who he is. You need to work just as hard. But that's different though from this character. He clearly doesn't know by the end of the movie. But I really thought that was a cool scene because, like, you have Pattinson who's worried. He's like, "Oh crap, my gig's up."
Yeah,
he's gonna expose everything about me because he already exposed all the corruption, which that kind of pulls back to when he goes to the scene where he goes to the orphanage, and you're like, oh my gosh, like there's all these like drop heads in there, which is the reference that's what they call people who take the drug, the drop, they call them the drop heads. Yeah, the junkies. So you go in there and it's like this spooky abandoned orphanage.
It's just a crack house.
Yeah, and then like all of a sudden you see the projector screen pops up. And then, like, as they're, like, exposing the corruption, you see Bruce Pattinson. He is slowly piecing it together on who the next target is. Mm-hmm. And I thought that scene was so cool because you're like, oh, crap. And then he's like, oh, I know.
It's supposed to be me, but not the Batman.
Right. And so I thought that was such a crazy scene of seeing him because he's still at his beginning learning of it, so he's not fully the best detective yet. So like he's still taking a while to piece together everything, and I think we might see a little bit more of an improvement in the second one as far as him being like, okay, I met my smartest foe. So
it'll be interesting to see him like having to rethink that so early in his career. I forgot to mention the scene where I can't remember who it is. Like the politician guy has the bomb around his neck.
Oh, you're talking about the DA.
Yeah, the DA. Thank you. That's a good one. Gets driven into a funeral with a bomb around his neck and has to have the Batman come and do an interview with the Riddler. I'm gonna blast through a couple more favorite quotes. They think I'm hiding in the shadows, but I am the shadows. Badass. That's like the worst freaking Spanish I ever heard. Followed by, Jesus Christ, what are you showing me here? Come on. Classics. They're so good. And anytime Paul Dano yells as the Riddler, fantastic. They watched us suffer. He's so good at just being a freakazoid. Paul Dano, by the way, is the guy from Prisoners, the one that they torture in Prisoners, and he's also in There Will Be Blood.
Which
excellent
amazing character in that movie.
Yeah, absolutely. And he's also in The Fabelmans. He plays Steven Spielberg's dad. It's
really?
Like a total shift for any character that he's ever done.
So here's a fun fact. I don't know if you knew this because I know you don't watch the Titans.
Oh, yeah.
So the guy that's being initiated into the gang at the very beginning of the scene who ends up running away.
Yeah.
He wimps out. That guy plays as one of the Robins in Titans.
Oh, huh.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, good for him.
At least he got something out of the Batman.
Good screen time.
Because, I would say Titans, I don't recommend watching it. Yeah. The first season's okay. It loses some traction.
That's how I felt about, Doom Patrol. There were so many highlights of Doom Patrol, but it was just under so much garbage that I was like,
you don't want to sit. It's hard to sift through it when you're trying to watch a show because with a movie you know there's going to be an ending. With a show you never know that there's going to be another season.
Yeah, I've landed on the point where I don't watch a whole lot of television anymore, and I don't feel all that bad about it. I like consuming long form media, but sometimes watching Breaking Bad or something like that isn't all that not recommended. However, I do recommend that you do not go back and watch Game of Thrones because the more that I see, the more Game of Thrones starts to feel like soap opera to me.
Really?
There are just some I'd kind of jumped into the middle of season 3 or 4 or something the other day, and I just started watching an episode and I was like, This
on
is just
this
not doing it for
episode
me.
of Game of Thrones.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't think the world will ever come back around to that. I don't like House of the Dragon. I might be relatively on an island there, but
I think the next season has some
great.
promise. The second season got a little bit more traction. I don't know. It's just differently told from the Game of Thrones.
And honestly, like, I don't know. It just doesn't recapture the magic for me. I'll leave it at that.
Yeah.
Okay, let's do some more fun facts. During auditions for this movie, Robert Pattinson took a selfie of himself in the batsuit in case it didn't work out, just because he wanted proof that he was up for the role. It's pretty fun. We did kind of talk about this earlier, but the makeup under the cowl, the black makeup around his eyes, that's the first time that's actually addressed in these movies, because typically he would just take off the hood and be like clean face Bruce Wayne, but in this one, it's like you don't take off the hood and do that. You have to wash your face because you have a bunch of dark makeup around your eyes. Pretty cool one. You mentioned Tenet earlier. This is pretty funny. But while Robert Pattinson was auditioning, he was in rehearsals for Tenet in like 2019, and Pattinson had to lie to Christopher Nolan about being in it.
Did he really?
But Christopher Nolan called him on it, and he was no stranger to Batman, and had probably been talking to Reeves about the project for a while. And Pattinson told him that he had a family emergency. And as soon as he said it, he goes, "You're doing the Batman audition, aren't you?" He's like, yeah, that's it. So, yeah.
The more stuff I hear about Christopher Nolan, he just sounds like such a great guy, and it's so funny because
he never stops.
No, well, and then you have like the article that came out. It was about Florence Pugh having the conversation with Christopher Nolan, and he's like, "Hey, I'm not going to be offended if you don't take this role."
Yeah.
Because it's a very crappy character.
I remember hearing about that. Yeah.
And she's like, "Are you kidding me? Like, it's a Christopher Nolan film.
Yeah. Well,
any actress or actor would be stupid not to take a Christopher Nolan film."
And she was in the Best Picture movie.
Right, exactly.
Like, you made the right choice.
Not that she wasn't in movies before, but I mean, it didn't necessarily hurt her chances of getting more movies.
He's so smart about his stuff.
Oh gosh.
Yeah, I'm really, really looking forward to the Odyssey. It'll be a while before we see it, but it'll be cool.
Yeah, I wonder if he's going to take a different adaptation of it. Maybe.
Yeah,
I'm interested to see.
It'll be interesting. I mentioned this a couple of weeks ago, but it could be like the most pretentious move of all time. Like, I just won Best Picture, and now I'm going to adapt like one of the best and original literary hero journeys of all time.
Yeah.
But it'll be interesting. Regardless, I'm looking forward to it. In the climax of the Batman, there's a scene where Batman is struggling to get up after a long sequence of fighting. He's pretty damaged, but he takes this like green drug and injects it into his leg. It's been ruminated on that this is Bane's venom.
Yeah.
Which is a drug eventually used for the supervillain Bane. But the venom was actually introduced before Bane was in the comic books,
Really?
as far as chronology. So he was addicted to it before the character of Bane even showed up, and Bane actually acquired it through his formula.
So wait, the Batman was addicted to the venom? I never knew that.
Crazy thing.
That's really cool.
Yeah, so somebody noted that on IMDb earlier. I was like, that's pretty interesting.
I really like that. That's kind of interesting because like in the comics, like Batman is so about like being basically a superhero without actually having the abilities. Like he's basically pushing himself to peak human form.
Yeah, that's like how the character has been considered. I feel like until this point, in a lot of ways, no. Like he's supposed to be like the world's greatest detective or whatever, but it just doesn't land the same way that it does in this one. Like this one just feels so holistically different. That was all the fun facts I had. Do you have anything else?
I just saw one, and it was so apparently Colin Farrell, he would go to Starbucks in his prosthetics of the Penguin just to see if anyone would recognize him.
Nobody did.
Oh my gosh! Like if I was to see that guy walk around, like you would definitely see some turning heads.
Let me get 2 iced mochas and let me get one of them little cookies that you got there in the glass case there. Yeah, I again, if you my double feature and if you like it for this movie are The Penguin. I just have to say you should watch The Penguin if you like this movie.
I agree.
It is not. I do not think the Penguin is as good, and it is definitely like you are going from movie quality to TV quality, which is a very, very different thing. But it do be hitting sometimes.
I would say, as far as compared to other TV shows I've seen in today's
it's a really
world,
good HBO procedural drama.
It does great.
Yeah.
I think that it doesn't feel too much like a TV series.
Yeah.
Like it's still got a decent amount of the same vibe.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's not like feels like.
I think mostly like the cinematography is what does it for me. Like the jump in difference between like a TV photographer versus Greg Fraser, which is just expert level, but it feels consistent with the movie in tone for sure. And like that kind of just comedic darkness, but they also just ratcheted it up because they got the TV mature rating, so they could throw in, all kinds of language, all kinds of sex acts, all kinds of stuff like that.
Yeah, a lot of the violence and brutality that is captured within the Batman as well.
Yeah.
Was able to transfer over to the Penguin show, which was really cool.
Definitely. Yeah, you should watch the Penguin. You should also, I would say, double feature this with the Dark Knight. Like, watch the Dark Knight first and then watch this. That's a long day. 6 hours of movies, but it's still really great.
Save it for a rainy day.
Yeah,
like
for
a
sure.
rainy, cold day, which we're coming into storm season, so we
Yeah.
might have some of those where you're like stuck at home on a Saturday and you're like, I don't want to do anything else, but let's watch a movie.
Yeah. Hey, polar vortex season is over. Get ready for rain. You would also like Zodiac. You should also watch Zodiac, the David Fincher movie. You should also watch Seven, the David Fincher movie. You could also watch The Crow, which is another like dark vengeance story. Not quite as good as this one. And watch the original Crow, not the 2023 Bill Skarsgård version, because that one really sucks.
I have not seen any of those three movies.
Yeah.
Zodiac has Robert Downey Jr., right?
It's Robert Downey Jr., Kevin Spacey. I want to say Mark Ruffalo.
Okay.
I can't remember if he is in it, but
I think Mark Ruffalo is definitely in it.
He's very good in it, but it's got like some of the more chilling like serial killer kill scenes in recent history, as does Seven, which is about like a serial killer that uses the 7 deadly sins.
Oh wow!
And a lot of them are really disgusting. David Fincher is really good at doing stuff like that. He's the guy that made Fight Club. So he's just, and The Social Network, the Facebook movie. So he's got like this really gritty style to the way that he makes movies.
I had a hard time watching Fight Club because it was just so. I couldn't get over the disgustingness of the house.
Yeah.
I don't know why. I'm not typically that type of person, but gosh, was it disgusting.
It's a very like Death of America. Consumerism has consumed. I mean, that's the whole crux of the movie.
Right.
Like we are the consumers and we will not stand for this anymore. Which makes it like it's not best picture worthy stuff, but still like what I would say poignant, but also pretentious. I do love Fight Club, but it's very, very grungy. Very, very grungy. Okay. That's about it. That's, I think, all that we got for the Batman. So, thank you for joining us for this episode. Later, I don't know when I'm going to release this episode. Maybe next week. I think I'm going to... I honestly, time frame probably doesn't matter at this point, but I will definitely have this one in the vault. So, whenever this is coming out, I hope whatever event is going on in your life right now is going well. And, yeah, we'll catch you on the other side of it. We're going to be continuing our weekend roundups here. Reilly and hopefully Rachel, my sister, and your wife will be on for a Babylon roundup sometime soon.
Oh gosh, I think we're going to do that over Easter.
Yeah, I'm very, very much looking forward to that one. I can't wait to talk about some Damien. Also, while I'm thinking about it, Damien Chazelle is doing an Evil Knievel movie.
Really?
Starring Leonardo DiCaprio as Evil Knievel.
Wow.
So
that's going to be interesting.
We're in for a ride for his next one.
Wow.
I can't believe that he's getting the funding to do something like that. I can only imagine what it's going to take to put together sets for Evil Knievel. But
well, and I think that would be cool too because it's going to be different from his other movies.
It'll be wild.
All of his other movies are kind of like jazz-centered a little bit.
And like First Man is kind of thrown in there in the middle of it, and it's weird. Like I've only seen the movie one time, and it's so like not Damien like doing what he loves. It's weird
because it's like a forced act basically.
Yeah, and it feels like kind of a one for me, one for you movie. Like he did that movie so he could make Babylon, but I don't know where the Evil Knievel thing lands. Like that's a weird pick, but it also could be excellent, and I'm very much looking forward to it. So anyway, we will definitely be doing roundups on Babylon sometime in the near future. And until then, I hope you guys stay nice and dry and safe. And that's about it. So, adios.
Adios.